absolutely thrilled to be able to share Vibha Galhotra's film Unpromised at the prestigious Stein Auditorium in New Delhi. I would also like to extend our sincere gratitude to the India Habitat Center, Dr. Pandey and her entire team for making this event possible. Vibha is a well-known contemporary artist whose conceptual and multimedia repertoire includes sculptures, installations, photography, videos, site-specific work, and public art interventions. She addresses the shifting topography of a world radically transformed by climate change, consumerism, capitalism, and globalization. Propelled by the constant negotiation between human beings and their ecosystem, Vibha's practice utilizes intensive research and an intuitive imagination to investigate the social, economic, and political implications of human activity on the environment. She draws from varied disciplines including the fine arts, ecology, economics, science, spirituality, and political activism to inform a poetic, visual response to the environmental changes and restructuring of culture, society, and geography occurring in the world. Today we have the privilege of screening Vibha's second film, Unpromised. It's a thought-provoking film that follows an enigmatic, nomadic protagonist through a desolate landscape, reflecting the humanity's profound losses and the challenges of rebuilding in the face of adversity. Shot in India, Israel, Jordan, and Palestine, the 17-minute panoramic film captures the drama of collapsing landscapes and raises fundamental questions about time, exploitation, and the future. The film was first presented at Nature Mode's Dhan Gallery in the end of 2022 in the exhibition Silent Seasons. We're delighted to be able to share this film with you again, and so I won't keep you waiting much longer. Let's immerse ourselves in this cinematic journey. Before we begin, I would kindly request everyone to switch their phones to silent mode. Thank you. We would like to continue the program with our panel discussion. May I please request our esteemed panelists to come up on stage? I can briefly introduce all of our panelists. We're really delighted to have Mira Nair, Gurvinder Singh, Peter Nagy on stage with us in a conversation moderated by Rahul Kumar.
Thank you, Vidisha, for that lovely introduction. So Vibha, a truly unpromised dystopian post-human scenario that you presented in this film. It talks a lot about the political and economic structures. It's a commentary on a lot of this that we need to step back and think about. I'm sure a lot of us in the audience have a lot of questions about the making of the film. How you've chosen the locations, the landscapes. I mean, even the music, the background music. Like, how did you go about making those choices? But I think what was most intriguing for me was this main character, wearing this bright colored hazmat suit. And you very cleverly, all the identifiers to this, the only thing that one knows is that it's possibly a human being. You don't know the color, caste, creed, religion, nationality, or I guess even the gender, right? It's all very cleverly hidden. And I think that was very, very intriguing to me. But before that, I would like to bring in Mira, our eminent filmmaker. You've influenced a generation in the way you've made your films. Very unique style where you've often used marginalized communities to tell their stories, not just from within India, but even globally, through Mississippi Masala, for example. And you started your career with documentary films, non-fiction, all the way to fictional films and feature films. What are your thoughts when you saw this film, Unpromised, especially given the fact that Vibha comes from an art lineage? She's not a filmmaker. And in fact, she confesses that she does not have the craft of making a film. And very quickly after that, Vibha, it'll be great for you to comment on, you have an extensive repertoire of your practice. You've, across the board, sort of dabbled into all sorts of formats and mediums. What is it that was missing that led you to make a sort of a film and a moving image of this kind? Mira.
No, our esteemed guest. Not at all. No. I really think that Vibha should speak first because I also want to know, the origin of the film and how she made it. And I'm happy to speak as much as you'd like, but after the filmmaker.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. It's really a pleasure to show this film. But on another, note, I don't think so. Showing an apocalyptic situation is a pleasure, because I'm showing the extreme situation here, where I was looking at the pandemic situation, what we have gone through, and also I started writing the film in the pandemic time. So when I was writing this film, I was looking at the landscape of what we are doing to the landscape already. It's very devastating to see the areas where you go and see the miners. You see all the new construction coming, and Chambal riverines. That area is completely devastated. They are flattening it. So they are coming into the way of the water. So these are the things which were making me think. And COVID was a time when we shot this film, because there were very less people on the ground. Otherwise, in India, to shoot this film was very difficult, because we don't get any places empty or without the presence of other human beings. So this was kind of a boon for making this film. And as Rahul said, that I was looking at the political situation and also the ecological situation, because I think this is the most urgent thing we have to deal with as humans, because our existence is really becoming a question mark with our acceleration of the consumption. So that's what I am looking at, and I wanted to say this poetically, and there has to be a romance of the landscape itself. So that's what I tried to capture in this film. I hope you liked it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Normally I, don't sit on panels speaking about films that are so deeply artistic and so deeply, I would say, idiosyncratic or individual, But I was very affected by this film. Firstly, I thought that it was genuinely apocalyptic. It really took me to another place. And today, seeing it on the bigger screen was also very transportive. I actually wanted more. I thought it was too short. But for me, the first time I saw it, it really did reflect about the aloneness of the world, about the state of the world we're in, about how climate, about how the world itself has denuded, and I felt that. But today when I saw it, I really just couldn't help but thinking about Palestine. It is shot in Palestine, and it is also shot in Israel, but Israel was Palestine before. And I just, that in itself, and the genocide we are facing, the state of the world now, where it is in front of our eyes, in addition to climate change, in addition to COVID, in addition to all these massive issues that we all face, we are now really going very recklessly forward into a world that is deeply divided by war, and it is very, it's impossible to actually function, I feel, and because you shot there, and because there's that extraordinary shot of this entering, this division between two lands that seem the same. Of course it recalls partition. It recalls these artificial walls that are so deep and cruel, that have affected the history of the world, and now are affecting most deeply the present of the world. And not to mention the fact that with 7,000 children being killed recently, almost a generation is being taken off the earth, which it just is, it's a terrible time. And I found in this film, in your film, the possibility to reflect meditatively and apocalyptically as well. That's why I wanted more, on this. you know, and very few of us in the visual world, you know, even vaguely attempt that kind of scope and that kind of probing into what is life and what are we doing with it, you know. So I commend you, but I really do encourage you to go further and deeper and really make this something that can touch us all. And it already is, but thank you so much for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gurvinder, you've made documentary films and you focus a lot on archived histories in the way you make films on contemporary issues. So what's your response to you know, what Vibha calls, she calls it a docu-fictional film. So what are your thoughts when you saw this film?
I mean, of course, I was struck by the visuality of it. And also, you know, as a practicing filmmaker, I was also, I thought very deeply about my practice as a kind of a narrative filmmaker, if I may call myself so, and people like Mira and us who make narrative films which are supposed to tell stories about people, spaces, time, existence. So I felt, you know, that making a film like this, and with Vibha, an artist making a film like this, coming with her practice in visual arts, I mean, she's kind of free from the kind of pressures we face as filmmakers. Right. So you know, so simply things like space, time, characterization don't matter here. They don't actually exist, yeah. And that's a great thing. So she's kind of free of all those conventions of narrative filmmaking, and in that sense, you know, the film exists. It's for me, this film is spaceless. It's timeless. So the idea, what needs to be conveyed, and what is being expressed, what is being perhaps the ideas it is giving rise to, the concerns it is talking about, become more center stage as kind right. of, you know, as kind of abstract expressions rather than you know, rather than in narrative cinema, which they unfold through interactions between people, spaces, time.
But do you think
so, you know, because, you know, like when we write a film, like we have a beginning, we have a middle, we have an end. A film starts at point A, traverses through a few other points, and eventually ends at point at some other point, you know. Right. And we see a journey, you know. But here, I don't have there's no sense of journey. Actually, and what Mira is saying, that she felt the film should go on. It leaves you with that kind of, because it has no beginning, middle, and end. And when you're immersed in an experience which has no beginning, middle, and end, and you're immersed in it, you don't want that experience to somehow abruptly get stopped. But for me, it's not that it should be a longer film. Perhaps if I go to point A and restart it from there, which is what a gallery experience gives. And when Peter was telling me it was shown continuously as a loop, I was imagining that experience, you know. Perhaps I might sit through 2, 3, 4 loops. And because it has no beginning, middle, and end, you can enter it anywhere. And I have felt that about a lot of works I see in art galleries, that you can enter anywhere, sit through it, reach the end point, which is the end point for the film, yeah. But not the end point of what it is expressing. And then restart from point A, and then go on. So and I have done that, you know. And when you enter in a museum art gallery, you enter in the middle. You normally don't enter in the beginning of it. Yeah. And so in that sense, it's this idea of the loop, the idea of the endless works very well with this.
But, you know, I mean, without a narrative sort of holding, so first of all, you know, your storytelling, you have chosen every screen, every frame from one to the end, and you've planned it in a certain way. And very rightly what Gurvinder says, right? So you come in at any point, especially in a gallery environment, and you see the film and you get out at it at some point, and there isn't a story. So again, you know, I mean, is that easier, tougher? How do you hold attention of the audience in a situation like this, 1 and 2? I mean, how do you respond as the maker where people are sort of, you know, twisting it around by coming in and going out as they please?
No,
Does
this
that
is a
matter
very
to you?
good point, actually, because, you know, when I made the film, we thought of making it short because it was supposed to be on loop, because I never showed it outside the gallery spaces. So, you know, this is the first time we are showing in such a setting. So this is a very different experience for me also, and I also felt that it ended very quickly. So, you know, it has to go on. If I have to show to this kind of audience or this kind of places, then I need to shoot it for longer or maybe edit it a little longer. Thank you for giving this, you know, that there is, yeah, that's the right point, that there is no entry point and no exit point.
Yeah,
You know,
like
you can enter
conventionally,
anywhere.
I mean, like, I won't like anybody to enter my film 5 minutes into the film. You know, I would like them to really start watching the film from the first frame. You know?
Right.
And I do get annoyed when people walk into the film, you know, when the film is already 5-10 minutes into the film, you know.
My film will end by then.
Peter, would love to bring you in at this point. You're an artist, you're a curator, but I guess most importantly, you're a gallerist. And you've pioneered in showcasing some of the most relevant and significant works of contemporary art in the country. And something that not a lot of galleries would risk doing, being commercial entities. So when you look at a work of art like Unpromised, I mean, how do you respond to it from a commercial standpoint? How do you commercialize and bring it to collectors, or, you know, get people to spend money and own such work?
That's completely irrelevant. We don't think about that at all. I mean, we haven't been working with Vibha for that long, actually, but I had seen other shows. I was quite familiar with her work as an artist. This was the first time, when we showed this film, it was the first time we did a show in Nature Morte with Vibha's work. But we had other things, and she also used our other space in Vasant Vihar. So there's always a balance with any artist's work. I mean, you're always balancing the commercial with the experimental. So Vibha came to us with this idea for the show. I mean, this was I mean, I sort of feel like, yeah, it was a very, very much more powerful experience to see it in the gallery, because we had it much, much larger, on a loop. The sound was much, and you could sit there and watch it at the same thing. So I have to agree with Mira. Yeah, I want to see it, especially today. I want to see it go on longer. I want more of it. But in that, when we showed it at the gallery, yeah, we had that. You were immersed into it more, and you were much more enveloped by it. To me, now seeing it again, almost a year later, after seeing it many times in that situation, to me, I'm struck by the similarities of just the aesthetic similarities it has with all of Vibha's work, actually. I mean, the surfaces and the textures and the way that things are framed and cropped looks to me like her sculptures, and especially the pieces she makes with the gungrus. So it's very much her aesthetic taste and style. I find it sumptuous, and actually most of it very, very beautiful. There are slight passages which, you know, definitely have to be read as an apocalyptic, dystopian moment, but I don't feel that I read most of the film like that. I was even questioning today, well, a lot of these are natural landscapes. Okay, we know that some of these landscapes have been created by human destruction and mining and things like that. But some of these are completely, you know, desolate landscapes that have been formed entirely by nature and natural processes. So there's nothing wrong with that. You know, so again, to me today, I was seeing again, it's really about time and the huge expanses of time that we try to, as human beings, like little gnats on the face of a planet for 15 seconds or something, how human beings try to, you know, wrap their minds around things like geological time and the formation, and then there's a couple of times you pan up to the sun and just concentrate on the heat of the sun, and it makes you think. So these vast expanses of time. What I like a lot, and it's easy to forget, is that little snippet when there's flip-flops with fancy patterned socks, kind of coming home. You're definitely at home somewhere. And then she goes to the bookcase, and it is predominantly a bookcase full of art books. And then she pulls down the Pahari miniature books. I have that book. And it's an Ansuk book, I believe. Is there? It's just Pahari miniatures, I think. Goswami's Pahari. And turns the pages, and again, refers to this other distant mythological time and how humans have tried to grasp it, explain it, hold on to it, articulate it in some way. And that, again, so for me, it's all about the passage of, this passage of time. And I don't see it being actually that dystopian or negative. I don't know. I mean, it is, of course. I mean, it's lonely and it's sad. And there's episodes. The figure falls over on the road. Then there's the encounter with the other, which is a plastic other or something. So there are episodic moments that we can read into. But again, they're very just boom, and then they're gone. And then we just go back into, I mean, just so much of it is just so stunningly gorgeous.
So in fact, you know that Peter spoke about that flip-flops and this bookshelf. So that's probably the only time that you're really bringing in the inside a home and reference to history through books, etc. Yeah. Everything else, of course, there's industrial intervention. There's a ship that comes in, and of course, you know, the other in terms of the mannequin. You know, but this inside a home and the safe environment of sorts and reference to history comes in only in sort of that one moment.
Yeah, because that happens after a fall. And so, you know, most of my work, they revolve around water, because I think if the water is not there, we don't exist. Our existence will end. So that's why I chose this Pahari miniature, you know, where there is a river and, you know, there is a scene of, you know, Krishna, you know, is being taken by his father through the Yamuna River. And Yamuna is very close to my heart, and I have worked a lot around Yamuna River. So that's what I wanted to bring in. I wanted to start from there, that conversation, and then when the fall happens, the person goes into this hallucination or into a dream or just before the death. I don't know what it is, because I left it open for the audience to understand it. So then the footsteps come, and I reach to that Pahari miniature. Yeah.
And then you very quickly snap us out of it.
Was it you in the red outfit? Yes, I thought so. I didn't know
Don't
you
give
enough
it
to
away.
understand your walk, but I thought it was you.
I just want to comment how strong I think the soundtrack is. It's very up my alley. I mean, I love electronic music. I love Brian Eno, Tangerine Dream, all that kind of stuff. So it's just the kind of music that I enjoy listening to. But I think the way you've matched the soundtrack with the pacing and the visuals themselves, I mean, then when it breaks into the Franciscan monks, you know, choir, just as we're seeing the underground flames of Jharkhand. I mean, for me, really, I think that surprised me the most, how well you handled the sound and the linking of the sound and the image. I mean, you've done other pieces with using sound, but I thought that was quite masterful, actually.
I second that emotion about sound.
So coming back to you, Mira, I mean, there are subtle nuances in your films, right? In Salam Bombay to Monsoon Wedding, there are societal issues that you deal with. How do you balance the required sensitivity and yet make the film impactful? There are times there are controversial issues to deal with, and you still make it, you know, entertaining for masses to consume and therefore take the message. So that's a lot of balancing act. I mean, how do you do that in your films?
Well, I'm a shameless populist. I don't like to make films for 2 or 3 people. I mean, I don't even know that. And I went through that with making, for my first 7 years, I made Cinema Verite documentaries. But, you know, I made India Cabaret, I made So Far From India, several films over 7 years in India. And even my family didn't know how to see them or where to see them, because it was in the 80s and not really now the vocabulary, you know, for a commercial documentary is very different than what it used to be. So that led me into making feature films or fiction films. But what was deeply impressed me and still impresses me is that life is much more, infinitely more powerful and more peculiar than fiction. And the extraordinary unpredictability of life, let's say, that you see in life, you see in those films, is what I wanted to never forget while creating fiction. And I created fiction as a real amalgam of the street. I mean, Salam Bombay is made with real street children, because the map of life I see in children's faces and in their hands and in their feet and everywhere in their eyes, most of all, is not something I want to cast from a kid in Vasant Valley. It's not going to happen. And it's not interesting to me, in fact. So for me, it was always how to tell the story. And I only chose fiction, to be honest, for an audience. Because I wanted people to go to the theater and to see it, because documentaries were not possible to be seen. But always the impetus or the incentive was to retain the electricity of what life is. But I found also, while making my documentaries, that I was, by that time, in 5, 6, 7 years into it, desperate for more control. I wanted to control the light on them, the gesture, the story, the narrative. In my cinema verite documentaries, the shape, the narrative, as Gurvinder was talking about, the beginning, middle, and end, was as life unfolded. It was created in the editing room. But I did want to shape it as a real story, which is what led me to Salam Bombay. But Salam is really a foundationally of the street, on the street, right, with people from the street, but an amalgam of of professional actors. It was the debut of Irfan Khan. I took Irfan from National School of Drama as an 18-year-old young man to be Salim in Salam Bombay. It turned out he was much taller than all the other kids who were malnourished and reached his waist. So he unfortunately got uncast as the major role and became a very small one-scene role, etc. So I have other stories to tell. But this amalgam of using professional actors with, I hate to call them non-actors because they are actors, with actors who do not know the camera, like the street kid, has become sort of, in retrospect, kind of a signature of my work, because I do it all the time. It could be Denzel Washington opposite, Sarita Chowdhury, a girl I saw on a bicycle in Mississippi Masala, and so on and so forth, and I keep doing it. But because I love the combination of somebody who has all the tricks of the trade, like a pro, opposite somebody who has no artifice at all. And that creates a kind of alchemy of truth to me that I love and I keep going for.
Are there your family members you also included
all the time.
in?
They are permanently free to me, and I always save money.
It's a good idea.
And they're also extremely talented and very natural, and also they really just do what I say, and they're just wonderful. I mean, I just saw Mississippi Masala, my second film, at the Mami, at the Mumbai Film Festival. It was a restored print after 30 years. And my young niece, Mira Nair, plays Meena, the young Sarita Chowdhury, at 8 years old. And now she's a big honcho at Amazon and running movies and all in India. But actually, she's the most marvelous little actor. And she really should be in the movies because she's extraordinary. But it's like that. I see the spirit of somebody literally in a park in Vasant Vihar, and I cast them. Often. So it's about, I guess, channeling the spirit or recognizing the spirit and then putting them up, creating an atmosphere of safety and fun, and where we all kind of make fools of ourselves, but I know what I'm doing, so I get what I want from them. But that's a whole other story.
So I think, Gurvinder, you've also worked with non-professional actors, right, in your film. And Vibha, you obviously have not worked with a professional actor at all, including yourself on the screen at times. So, views, thoughts as to how that has been.
No, I would like Gurvinder to,
I don't know. I mean, I've always felt that nothing is absolute. You know, the truths are not in the absolute. The truth is not in the fiction, and the truth is neither in the non-fiction. You know, and the truth is not in the actor, and the truth is not in the so-called non-actor. The truth is not in the stage. The truth is not in the unstage. So I'm kind of, always looking for this kind of, balancing act between these, what we can either extremities or kind of absolutes that we are sometimes accept as the ultimate. So it's and I completely agree with Mira, that I mean somehow I have also, my first film when I went out to cast, Dhan, and I was like meeting all the actors in Punjab. The film is in Punjabi, and I was like, none of the actors I was meeting was kind of, I felt was anywhere near to the truth, to the being of the characters which I had in mind and which were written on the in the script. So and when I went with, we had already recce'd the village in which we were going to cast to shoot the film, and we would walk around the village in the lanes and said, this is my character, he's my character, she's my character.
Right.
So why are we like going to Amritsar, Jalandhar, Patiala, Chandigarh casting? All the actors are here, all the people are here, and let's see if we can work with these people, and they belong to the world of the film. They understand. They are already the film,
Right.
Yeah. So that's it. But yes, of course, there were certain in terms of there were certain limitation. There's the limitation, in working with them, and you need to understand that limitation, and that influences your shooting style, and you have to work. They can deliver something and they cannot deliver something. They can be in front of the camera in a certain way, but not in another way.
Right.
Yeah. So for some roles, I felt that it's not that you make it a style that you're just casting non-actors, but then be free. So I have retained that, to be free to find, if I find that being in an actor, I happily cast that actor, and if I don't, then it could be anybody, Like in Chauthi Koot, there's a scene in which these boys are traveling in the train, in the middle of set in during the phase of terrorism in Punjab, and I was like, and so these boys are just had to sit quietly in the train and be a little scared, nervous, and that's it. And then one day I was in Amritsar. We were in the pre-production of the film, and I entered the lift of a mall, and there was a security guard. He was there. And my assistant was with me. I said, he's the character.
Wow.
I said, he's the boy. And I had the script. I took out my script. I taught 2 pages of his role. I said, he was shocked. He said, what? He said, yeah. I said, just read these 2, and we'll meet you after we're going to watch a film. I said, after 2 hours, I'll meet you, and we'll sit and talk. And that's it. That's how he got cast. And then you have to devise ways of working with them. It just doesn't end there. And then when he came on the street, he was completely
taken aback.
Yeah, taken.
Right.
It was by the crew size, by the lights, everything, and the whole paraphernalia which we have to deal with while making a film. And he was really nervous, giving the first shot, and he just would forget his dialogues. So I told him, take your time. Read out the dialogue in your head. Say the dialogue in your head, and then say it. And then then read out. Then say the second dialogue in your head, and then say it. So there's these pauses between the dialogue in which he's actually recalling the next dialogue in his head.
Right.
And that's fine. Somebody could be like that. So it gives to some lovely accidents, it gives you some lovely possibilities which, a trained professional actor will not, by accident give you that. So yes, but I have retained a kind of a free, I keep myself, I'm not rigid about how I cast, whosoever suits the role.
Yeah, but this reminds me of my first film, when I was shooting around the Yamuna River. So we hired these actors. So, my crew hired these actors and we were supposed to row the boats. They make these boats locally with styrofoam and, jute bags. So, so I said that we have to train them for a day So I asked the people, you know, the boat, the guys who actually row the boat down the river, that teach them how to row the boat. And these actors failed for 2 days completely. And then I said, why I'm looking for actors? You know, why not to cast these boys? So we had these swimsuits, you know, so we asked them to wear the swimsuits, and they were so shy. So shy, and also we told them not to look at the camera, but they always looking at the camera. So we took whole day to shoot that scene, just a little scene. So it was, I think freedom is one thing I'm also looking at, but I'm not a professional filmmaker, so I'm just looking at visuality, that what I want as my visual and what story I want to, you know, communicate through those visuals. So that's what I am trying to do in my films. And you know, you asked me this question, that why the moving image? Because I come from, you know, visual art background where most of the works are silent and they are objects. So, you know, when you are making the object, there is a very different grammar. And it's not very easy to communicate that grammar to the masses. But the kind of work I am doing, the kind of issue I'm dealing with on environment, and to tell the story to the masses rather than only to the converted art audience, it was very important for me to venture into the moving image. So that's what I think I tried to do, but yes, I need to put it on loop and make you bored for another hour to put it on loop.
Beware, audience. You know, so I mean, in this time and day of sensationalism, where you know the negative stories of war and lynching and hate sort of go viral, how do you tell stories? How do you express stories of hope? I mean, how do you really do that and bring audience to pay attention to something which is talking about hope and future?
Does hope sell? I don't start like that, I must say. I don't start like that. I don't start actually even by thinking of an audience. And certainly not often about hope. For me, it has to be an idea that gets under my skin, that doesn't let me go, you know. And then we populate and make the beginning, middle, and end, or a story perhaps around it. But I do agree that I don't love films that make it completely hopeless, because I need some fuel from even making the film or showing the film to give me something to live for, to give me something to believe in. But it isn't the premise that begins the film for me. You know, so it's other things, and it changes, thankfully, because I never want to, there's a saying, you know, you can't step in the same river twice. I really stay away from repeating myself completely, and I'm quite ruthless about that. When I made Salam Bombay, it was probably the first Indian film that was distributed all over the world in commercial spaces, in all over. So Hollywood, you know, only knows how to give you the next film with a brown kid or a, you know, other kid. You know, so I had to say no to several films on children, you know, for instance, because I was smart in that sense. I was sensible that I didn't want to go down that route. And I went into always something that is actually almost scary, and because it's new. You know, Mississippi Masala was a different thing, completely, you know. So that's the fuel that I look for, not only because it's new, but because it is so difficult to make a film, to raise money. I'm dying to know how you raised money for yours, by the way. I was like, you know, I thought that was you because you couldn't have afforded anyone else to come in all those different countries. But I'm curious, because it's a whole other language of finance. You know, you can't... Anyway, to make our kind of movies, I'm sure Gurvinder will have the same feeling. I mean, it's very different, you know. So, and with me, I was always the, you know, the kid from Bhubaneswar, you know, in New York or Los Angeles. I never wanted to be like them. I wanted to tell my my stories. So I'm always sort of singing for my supper and showing what I'm trying to do because they have no idea about the rest of the world, you know. So that's another tightrope to walk that I've walked now for 35, 40 years, you know.
Right.
But so it's different impetuses, really. But mostly, I really believe it's a mantra of mine, which I genuinely believe that if we don't tell our own stories, no one else will.
Right.
And if they tell them for us, which they've done for centuries with colonization, they will bugger them up. So you've got to tell your own stories, and you've got to tell it your way. Absolutely. And you've got to arm yourself like you have done with extraordinary craft and people, and great people who will take you further to tell that story that is unique and that is yours.
Right. Gurvinder, any views?
I mean, we were talking about hope. For me, I think the hope has to be interwoven into the very core of the narrative of the film. You know, it's not just about a hope which you are left with in the end, and it's apocalypse and hope. You know,
right,
living concurrently and coexisting, because nothing. I mean, yeah. I mean, so you just weave in this little instances, these little moments where you feel, yes, that there is hope, but then perhaps, you know, it's a false alarm. And I mean, it's nothing. I mean, it's not, for me, I don't see it as a kind of, you know, I don't think of it as a kind of a feeling you're just left with, you know, at the end of a film. But the film is kind of woven between the hope and the hopelessness.
It's all runs parallels.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's perhaps what life is. You know, it's not.
I mean,
it doesn't.
Absolutely.
It doesn't end with.
It's not one versus the other. It's sort of.
It doesn't end with one sentiment or with one.
Right.
Idea.
Peter, you've seen the art ecosystem evolve over the last 2 decades. From West to very closely been seeing what's happening in India. From the standpoint of the way the contemporary art ecosystem is in the country today, so what are your views of, you know, this intersection of film and art, and, you know, this evolution of people accepting this as a work of art, and not just a film?
The art world has no problem accepting this as a work of art. I mean, if you talk about a larger art ecosystem, I mean, definitely, I mean, a country the size of India has much more potential and much where to go. We saw huge growth, I think, in the serious contemporary art world of India, say from 2000 to 2010. And that was fueled for a number of reasons. And then it plateaued out, really, since then. And I think we're at this plateau, but I mean, and it's going to grow, but I'm not sure how far. I mean, educational systems play a very big part in this. You know, and people being exposed and go. I mean, it shouldn't be necessary to have to go out of India to get a more rounded, full experience of what contemporary art is in the world is, but unfortunately it still is, right? And unfortunately everything is still a little too, you know, very much just in Delhi and Bombay, and we need more things in all the tertiary cities of the country, serious things. We desperately need more galleries, commercial galleries in this country. There's lots of very young artists who are doing wonderful work, and there's no place for them to show. And I mean, I think a gallery has to do what I did in New York, but then also when I came here. A gallerist has to kind of find themselves in a place and just discover their peers who are other artists of their same generation that they have a connection to, and then you grow and mature with that group of artists. Of course, you're going to lose some other things. It's going to ebb and flow. But too often here, especially, people have this idea that, oh no, I have to know the rich collectors, I have to have money, I have to be able to, I mean, how will I sustain? But no, I mean, we're lucky that actually an art gallery is one of the cheapest types of businesses to set up. All you need is an empty room and some lights, right? You don't have to buy your stock. We just borrow it from the artists, you know? And when I started the gallery here, I had no money and did it on a shoestring, you know? So there has to be more entrepreneurial spirit, and we have to see younger people starting art galleries just for because that's the only way the arts infrastructure is going to grow here. Because artists need to have solo shows, and they need, and even if nothing sells, it doesn't mean it's. I mean, you need to have. I don't think art is finished until it's exhibited publicly, and the artist has to have a solo show, you know, in order to see their own work, and then of course the response and all that. So without that gestation period, that very necessary part of it, I think that's a big thing holding back the Indian thing. I mean, we have a lot of institutional growth. I mean, Kira Nadar's done a wonderful job. The Serendipity, you know, people are building a facility here in Delhi on top of what they do in Goa. The map is. I mean, I think the institutional side of things has really, you know, progressed greatly in the last 20 years. And I see that's more active right now. But it's really that small scale gallery. There's always a problem too, I think, that everybody wants to do big. And that's why everybody loves the art fairs. Oh, it's a big giant spectacle, and we're all going to run around and have lots of art. And it's just like, ugh, you know, it's like, you know, actually we need small galleries that the gallerist makes a commitment to the artist, and that this is going to be a long-term relationship, and we're going to grow together. And just the simple fact of having a permanent space in a city, doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be fancy, but that it's always there. And you're just, you know, doing 10 to 12 shows a year, that cumulative effect actually is what it's all about. And people get a little too sidetracked by the, you know, the event, the big event. And I see that being more, not really what grows the infrastructure, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, so there is hope. Vibha. Very quickly coming to you, and then one more question for my panelists before we open it up to the audience for any questions. So this is your second film, and you have shot for this in 4 countries and 7 cities, states within India. So one, I mean, how did you go about choosing a lot of these places? Were you aware of them? Did you visit them before, or you sort of did secondary research? And second, I mean, was it really necessary for you to go out and, you know, make it such an elaborate plan to shoot for the 17 minutes? I mean, there is AI and other possibilities. Did you ever consider any of that?
That's above my knowledge, AI. But yeah, I wanted to go to these landscapes because, you know, I visited those landscapes, let's say, a decade back. And then I wanted to revisit those landscapes because those are the, like, see, if you go to, you know, in Gujarat, there is this place, Anand, where the ship breaking happens. So, you know, I was doing a project long back when I was looking at the labor laws. So, you know, or maybe the labor conditions at that time. There was no law at that time. So, but, you know, they introduced it. But I wanted to revisit it and see the condition of that place, and maybe meet some people. So, you know, there were a lot of people coming from outside. There were migrants who were working there. So I started the film from Anand itself. So, you know, from that ship, you know, that shot of the ship. That was my first shot. And we had shot quite a lot, but we were being held by the authorities, and our cameras were being taken because there was no permission given, or maybe, you know, there was nobody to take the permission from. There was no knowledge about that. So we couldn't take the permission, and when we shot there, and the authorities came and they said, you have to take the permission, and we will not give you the permission. So I said, good enough. So I know. Thankfully, one of my assistant, he kept one card of the camera. So that was the shot which we used in the film also. And rest of the shots were not that great, so we couldn't use that. But, you know, it was very important for me to see the landscape during the COVID, because in COVID, there were lots of permissions were not being taken, or, you know, they were being ignored. So a lot of people started doing their business, or the industry started using the land in a very rough way. So that's what was happening all around in India. And I'm sure it was happening at the other places also. I'm not going to be like bad-mouthing India all the time. But this is a state where we have such a population that we cannot handle on the landscape, and then we are overly, creating things, or maybe just building. There is this utopia of creating, making and consuming. So that's what pains me, or maybe there has to be a streamline of doing this. So that's what, So the choice of landscape was what I experienced during my journey.
You were aware of those places. Okay, very quick closing comments, slightly controversial here. There is a counterpoint of view, right? At a geological scale, if we see humans have existed for about 300,000 years, only the earliest evidence of human being. And Earth is celebrating 4.5 billionth birthday, right? That's the age of Earth. So keeping that in mind and all the evolution, I mean, isn't it all part of evolution? Dinosaurs ate up all their food and they went extinct. So if the way, and man versus nature, to me, is the silliest statement. Man is part of nature, and if we do completely, in the process of doing what we are doing, kill ourselves and we perish, then so be it, if that's the eventuality, right? So one, why bother, right?
We have accelerated.
Again, it's not necessarily my point of view, so don't beat me. Second, if with a tremendous amount of effort, at best, we could slow things down and delay it by, throw a number, 20 years, 15, 40, whatever that number is.
Longer.
Is it worth it? And, why should we be concerned about it? Okay, so there's another point, right? So with that 1 degree increase in the global temperatures, there are certain viruses that were dormant over 40, 50,000 years are now sort of waking up because, that's their atmosphere where they...
Actually, that's a very different debate and very long debate.
Right. So, no, I'm giving 15 seconds each. Come on, respond.
Peter?
Nobody wants to speak on this. Why bother? Shouldn't we perish?
The only thing that's going to save the human race on this planet is if we lose about 2/3 of the people on the Earth in the next 10 to 20 years.
Say that again, please.
I think the only thing that's going to save is if we lose 2/3 of the people on the Earth in the next 10 to 20 years. Unfortunately, that 1/3 is going to be the very rich people in their houses in New Zealand, I guess. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I think the litmus test here, to me, must be if you have children or not. I don't have children. I never wanted to make any children. But I'm sure that profoundly changes your existential view of everything. And you just want to ensure that your children and your grandchildren have good lives, I guess. But I don't have that, so I mean, I don't know how to say, really.
Gurvinder.
We will remain concerned because we are thinking people, and we are people who express. We have language, and then we have invented languages like cinema and other art forms. So, and that's what distinguishes us from other living beings on this earth, be it animals or plants. So to express is in our nature, and you cannot stop. And to think and to reflect and to be concerned is part of our being. Whether what happens or not is not in our hands, is not in one individual's hand. What will happen, eventuality will happen, but to express, to share, to be concerned is part of our being, and one cannot stop doing that. That's it, I think.
Thanks.
You say the same. Yeah. I would completely agree with what Gurvinder is saying, and I actually, one thing I felt in your film was that it felt like a mirror a bit. In that meditative sense, it felt like a mirror of society, of the world, And I think that in this natural need to express, and some of us are privileged enough to be able to express, especially in a form like cinema, which is enormously popular, and can really affect people. That's the only that's the only way to kind of live amidst the despair of what's going on in the world, both politically and religiously as well. So yeah, as long as we can and be open to that, that gives me that succor, that hope. But that is all,
Right, thank you.
Vibha. Ritwik Ghatak says in his book that art cannot change the world, only politics can. So, since I read that, I stopped having any hope that my art is going to change anything.
Right.
I have some different experience with that.
Okay.
Because that was the question that made me, I took years to call myself an artist, but that is the question that propelled me, is can art change anything at all?
Right.
Because I used to first be an actor on stage and in political theater, Badalda, Badal Shakar, all this. And it was to see if one could impact something. But an actor really has no control, over the vision that is usually the director's.
To get behind the cameras.
Yeah, or stage,
Right.
And it's not often that you can change the world, but in Salam Bombay we did change the world, because we created Salam Balak Trust, which is now 40 years old, and 5,000 kids a year are being changed and given a life, and several thousands have now, and it's extraordinary because they become creative people, creative beings, and so it's my one experience, and there are others.
But then you combine it with activism and action.
Yes, of course. But the film ignited.
Ignited that.
And the film was about the real kids, And I have, I use it as activism, but you can't do it with everything, It was Salam Bombay, but then when I moved to East Africa in 1990 to make Mississippi Masala, I discovered the absolute richness of the of Africa and its particularity from country to country, like we have in India. But no one knows that, and everyone thinks it's one dark joint, and Africans very rarely have the abilities to tell their own stories. So that again propelled me to create a film school, a free film school called Maisha, which is now 16 years old, that created an East African film culture by putting it in the hands of those who live there, but with mentoring, with people from the outside and inside, etc. So in that sense, art and activism can and I think must impact, but I'm not a social worker, I'm primarily a filmmaker, and one should not get bogged down, by giving up one for the other.
No, I absolutely agree with her. And your film also have changed people. Like, you gave me a critical thinking to think about those things, looking at those kids and their conditions, because otherwise people overlook those conditions. So that's what I think art does. We give critical thinking, or we give them a thought. So, that's where I would like to end.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have questions in the audience? Can someone take a mic? I can barely see anything. Please say your name, if you can very briefly say what you do, and if the question is directed to a specific panelist here.
The director of the documentary. When she said Palestine, did she have to take visa for Palestine from Israel? Because Israel prides itself by saying we've given independence, they can develop their own country, their own state, but they are not doing anything. So
yeah, not for us as Indians. We can go on both the sides. So, so that was my privilege, that I had friends on both the sides. I was there for 3 months, and I have worked on both the sides with artists and artisans. So I have learned a lot from them, because, no doubt there is a great adversity, for sure. But then normal people don't want war. People don't want war. People do want their land back, definitely, and they deserve that. But I don't know how to answer those long walls.
Were you able to go in and out of one place and then another?
There was a check post. They used to check my passport for sure, but there was no visa as such given. Yeah.
That's
Any other question? Anyone?
That's Paula's.
Sorry?
Paula.
Vidisha, here, please.
Can I go here?
Okay,
Sorry.
after you, just after this one.
Hi, my name is Anjali, and I actually work in the space of climate. So thanks, Vibha, for making such an impactful film. I work for a development finance institution, a global organization where climate change and mitigating and adapting to the impacts of climate change is really high on our priority. So one of the hot topics of discussion and debate everywhere is who is responsible, who's accountable, and who does climate impact. So your movie kind of showed that, everybody is impacted and everything is gone, but that's not going to be the reality, right? I mean, just like in COVID, people with money were able to cope with it better. So rich nations, developed countries have, better finance, better technology to handle it. So is that an angle that you've thought about, or as Mira, I've asked you to explore this, is that something that, you would look at if you take this to the next level?
I mean, the whole idea of equity, of equanimity, how some of these things impact one versus the other.
So see, there is no equality as such. We don't live in a world of equality. We have a lot of examples, I mean. So as Peter also mentioned, that rich will survive as they have bunkers in New Zealand. So, I don't know where the world is going. But for me, it's very important that to tell a story that environment is not going to differentiate between the rich or the poor. It's going to impact all of us same. So that's what I think the film, that's why I'm hiding the identity of the person. He, she, it. I don't know who's that person. I mean, yeah, I'm in some scenes I am there, but not in all. You would like to answer on this? No. Yeah? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
We have one question here.
Hi, I'm Paula. I'm from art history background and currently at JNU, School of Arts and Aesthetics. And my question is also for the artist. I was wondering, from a performative point of view, because it was really you in these specific places that carry a lot of history, and not even history, a lot of current tension. Was there a sort of embodiment, and how was that experience? Could you compare it to like almost a performance in that sense as well?
Yeah, if you look at the film, or how I view it is that I'm always thinking of the politics, I'm always thinking of the religion, I'm looking at the different kind of differences. So, then I think of a characterization of my character, particularly in this film, that how we can navigate those, or how we can ignore those things which are not needed in the world. So, these religious or the political differences, according to me, I might be thinking rational. A lot of people will disagree with me, but I think those are not the important things for sustained humanity on the planet. What is more important is that coexisting with the other species and also with nature. That's the most important, and I think that's what we are born for. That's why it is called unpromised. Because we were promised something else, some other kind of a land which is rich in its beauty, or it's in flora and fauna. And then we're just another species, but then we thought we are the most powerful and we can really rule the planet. I mean, I'm talking very cliche thing, but it is true that, that how we can take the ownership of the place. So this is what my quest is, that how we as humans have started thinking of the ownership. Yeah, thanks.
Vidisha, there's a question here.
Congratulations, Vibha. I've been witness to a lot of the making of the film, thankfully. I have a question to actually all the panelists, if whoever wants to go first. I increasingly think about the role of art as a space of retention, because there's so much of hyperstimulation happening in the world, and specifically because we saw a film. What does cinematic retention mean to you? Because why do we remember for so many years? And as makers, how do you think that your cinematic imagination retains, and what are these moments of retention that you think? And because I'm thinking retention more in a political space, actually, not so much only within the aesthetic space. So because today I feel art is perhaps one of the few places where there is space for retention. And in a classroom where I teach, I also constantly talk about retention as even a way of like being conscious about what we see and what we remember and why we may remember. So if you can respond.
That's a very long question.
So I'll simplify it to you. Just like, how does retention matter to you? What you express and what people remember, and what is that conversation?
See, as an artist, I'm expressing what I am feeling at that very moment, and I think it's very important to share with the other audience or other people who are sharing the time and space with me. So I don't know how to really answer your question, because I am also in that phase of I don't know what's going to be from here. So and as an artist, it's my observation what I'm expressing, nothing more than that. So I don't know how to answer your question here.
I mean, any artwork is a dialogue between the created and the viewer. So and it's open to interpretation. Like her film is open to it can be read the way you can read it differently from somebody else. And so in that sense, I don't know. I mean, retention is not something fixed. It can be, quantified. And yeah, it's an experience, and then an experience has how the experience is received. It can be so vastly different from person to person. Like in the Natya Shastra, they say, because the basis of if it's about a rasa, it's not that the actor should feel the rasa. If the audience should feel the rasa. If that rasa is not transferred to the audience, then the actor feeling that rasa is meaningless, So in that sense, the transfer is so important, and perhaps, and it cannot be quantified. We cannot say how much has been retained, how much has been received, and in what manner it has been received, and what impression it has left. It's very difficult to say.
And in many years of making films, there is no, absolutely, I'm constantly surprised at what people choose to retain from any of my films, let's say, or what in each film can provoke them into inspiration or reflection or whatever it might be, delight. So it's very interesting, and is actually one of the real joys of the struggle of making any art, but cinema for sure, is that you have absolutely really no idea. There's marketing, there's previews, there's surveys, there's all this stuff that Hollywood has brought into the system of trying to gauge what the audience will think of your film and so on. But actually that matters only up to a very small percentage. It's the individual response of what they get from you, and also what you didn't intend, and what is created in an audience. That is a constant source of amazement to me, And actually, I view that as my reward.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time probably just for one question, and the last question. Vidisha, okay.
Is it on? Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much, ma'am, for this great film. I have a couple of questions, one from you and one from Mira, ma'am. First of all, I would like to just ask you about the title of this film. Like, it is Unpromised. Un is written in the bracket. So, how did you think about it, and what is the significance of putting un in the bracket and promised?
Because I still think that it's a promised land, but un is the right now situation. So if we improve from here on, then it's still going to be promised land.
Right.
But that's why it's in bracket. So
Right.
that's why we are still hopeful.
It's up to us.
It's up to us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very thoughtful film. Thank you so much. Another question from Mira,
It's the
ma'am.
last question, please.
Yes, yes. Ma'am, your films, like I have watched so many films of yours. The international best, like one of the best movies, Monsoon Wedding, I would like to particularly talk about it. Like the way you choose songs for your films. Some of the songs like which are not like which were used in the old movies. Suppose if I talk about this song Chunri Chunri, like you used Salman Khan's film, that song from that movie. Like how do you choose? Because I've not seen so many directors using such things, but you incorporate such iconic songs. Like what is the process and how do you think how do you think that this song is fulfilling my film? Like, what is the process? Just want to know.
Thank you. Well, music and sound design is a very big part of how I even think of film. Sometimes a piece of music is actually the inspiration of a film. In making The Namesake, there was a Bhatyali song, a boatman song that I heard that from. I loved the Bowls. I loved that music, but I heard this particular song that it happened to be recorded by Nitin Soni, who at that time did not make film scores, and I make very careful film scores. So it was a real process of induction to work with the kind of rock musician of sorts to service essentially the image in my films. So sometimes the music, we wrote the script of Salam Bombay to Rag Kirwani by L. Subramaniam. He had legendary violinist. He'd never made a film, never thought to make a film, but he ended up making the film score of Salam Bombay as well as the next film, Mississippi Masala. So music is very much like the beating heart, I would say, of my films, as is actually silence, because I don't think one should plaster the thing with music at all, or this horrible thing that now they call background sound design in India, which is like tells you how to think and how to feel and whatever. It's a highly manipulative and reductive tracks, which I don't go for. But in terms of using popular music and songs, it's actually a purely intuitive process, simply because I enjoy those songs. And sometimes, like in Monsoon Wedding, I wanted to highlight the moment that P.K. Dubey falls in love with Alice, the maid. And in Monsoon, the Barsat itself is so multi-faceted, in our thinking. It is liberation, it is joy, it is food for the crops. It's all kinds of ways to think about the rain. But that aaj mausam bada beiman hai, with Mohammad Rafi telling us that it's like a beiman thing. It's it'll play tricks on me, this rain. I mean, actually that was a suggestion from my husband, who loves Kishore Kumar, who loves a lot of popular music, and I love it too, but he, so that was a suggestion, and it was the kind of thing that changes the gears and highlights the moment in I think, a completely cinematic way. And I've now been making a musical of Monsoon Wedding, which is a completely different type of soundtrack. Vishal Bharadwaj has been making the music. We have like 21 songs, actually new songs, that will propel the story of Monsoon Wedding. But he told me a long time ago, he said, Mira, how do you think of like Dream Girl? I use Dream Girl in a short film. I mean, it's just about opening the heart. I always think of my films, especially Monsoon, as an accordion, something that will open your heart and then squeeze it, and nothing like our music, that does that. I'm also a student of Indian classical music, so I go between the classicism and the pop of so much of our incredibly rich past. And even in my earliest Cinema Verite documentaries, I've always used Iqbal Bano or Ghazal. I also grew up with it. My father was from Lahore. And we grew up in Bhubaneswar, in Orissa, but with several hours a day listening to ghazal, which we did not understand at that time. But it's part of my DNA, actually. So I notice in retrospect that even from the very first film, I've used pretty much what I love, and if it informs the story in spirit in any way, but it's a great joy, working with music carefully. Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you very much. Sorry, we're totally out of time. Thank you for being a wonderful audience, and thank you to all my panelists.
Thank you, Vibha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vibha, for the
work
wonderful work.